So, of course, as you dream of a separated ego, you dream of a separated ego and believe in a world that rests upon it. This is very real to you. You cannot undo it by not changing your mind about it. If you are willing to renounce the role of guardian of your thought system and open it to me, now, me, of course, it's I as Jesus speaking, all right? This is a persistent theme in the Course. Jesus keeps asking us to turn our thinking over to his guidance instead of getting caught in what we might call daydreaming, analyzing our own dreams, going over what's happening in our daily life. I will go back to this is Jesus again saying, I will correct it very gently and lead you back to God. So he's really talking about helping us to move away from the daydreaming and or the nighttime dreams. The Course, as a matter of fact, says your nighttime dream, your daytime dream, it has a different form. That's all. It just has a different form. It's still a part of a dream. Going on. So, one of the most fantastic ways to understand the teaching of A Course in Miracles is through stories. While A Course is a profound spiritual text, its central message is remarkably simple. We are asleep, dreaming a dream of separation and awakening to knowledge of love. So, we're dreaming this dream of separation. The matter of fact is, you are already awake. You are already awake, if you will, in heaven, but it's as though that part of you is sleeping, all right? Nighttime dreams, daytime dreams, of course, is the same. Jesus says, you have chosen a sleep in which you have had bad dreams, but the sleep is not real, and God calls you to awake. The idea is to wake up, to remember that you're sleeping in order to wake up. And just a second, what's going on? So the Course in Miracles treats ordinary waking as dreamlike. In that framework, dream interpretation is not merely about nighttime dreams, but understanding the symbolic nature of all projection. So remember, projection makes perception. I've got a slide coming up on this in a few minutes. This is one of the most important concepts you really got to understand, that projection makes perception. So it simply means that we judge everything we see and we throw our interpretations on top of everything we see. So I just gave you the illustration that my sister and I interpreted the same events as differently. Well, you can have a friend could be together and seeing the same event at the same time and still interpreting it very differently as well. That's normal that that would actually be happening. But normal is not normal in the sense of being awake, really awake. So I'm going to be talking tonight a bit about demythologizing. Demythologizing. So demythologizing is we take myths or stories and then we try to understand them just in the same way. And because it's got a story, there's a message there. A dream interpreting, like you go to a psychotherapist who does dream interpretation, they're going to look at your dream, interpret the meaning of the dream. Well, just as that's true for your individual psychology, so do we have myths, which are common for all of mankind, but they say something. And it's, what's important is understanding what that myth is trying to tell us. So one of the first that we'll look at here is Robert Adams. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Robert Adams. So he was a real, a true mystic. By mystic, he really devoted to awakening and really devoted to the mystic path. So he lived, during 28 to 97. He was out there, Silence of the Heart. I love this guy. He's really, really, really clear. Very different in terms of what he's saying on the ordinary sense, but very clear. He says, this whole world is like a dream. When you awaken from a nighttime dream, where does it go? When you awaken, you will laugh at all your troubles because you will see they never existed except in a dream. Now, when he said, when you awaken, what he means when you really awaken, when we awaken in the sense of Jesus awakening or Buddha awakening, when we really wake up and see the dream and see the story and then we understand what was really going on. So much of the dreaming that we do within the context of the world is, for example, it's got fear-based. So if you get a higher perspective on it, then you can sort of see that the fear, the nightmare part of it, was nothing but what something was going on in your mind. And the entire world that you behold is a dream. Yet there is a dreamer. Find the dreamer, and the dream disappears. This is Robert Adams now. And then, of course, the miracle says, the world you see is but a show of sight and sound and shapes that seem to be real, yet they are not real at all. And the more you can realize that it is dreaming, the more you'll realize that it's not real at all at a deeper level. So the common themes we have between Robert Adams and the Course is the world is a dream, the self we take ourselves to be is part of that dream, and awakening comes from discovering the dreamer rather than trying to fix the dream. It's not about fixing the dream. It's not about manipulating the outside world or other people. It's about realizing what's going on within your own dream. So I highly recommend memorizing this. This is the beginning of chapter 21. It's the introduction to chapter 21. I memorized it years ago, and it's really good if you can repeat this because it makes it so clear. The first sentence, I already talked about it. Projection makes perception. The world you see is what you gave it. Nothing more than that. It's our interpretation. But though it's not more than that, it's not less. Therefore, to you, it's important. It is a witness to your state of mind, the outside picture of an inner condition. As a man thinketh, so does he perceive. Therefore, seek not to change the world, very important, but choose to change your mind about the world. Perception is a result and not a cause. So perception, so the way I see, whatever I see is the important thing. So talking a little more about the dreaming of the world, that's from a Course perspective. The Course in Miracles, the FIP edition, makes 635 references to dreams, including 8 references to the dreaming of the world. And I got a little paper here somewhere that describes how many times it talks about awake or awakening. It's a constant theme throughout the Course. So dreaming is the post-separation state in which the Son of God dreams a world of sin, guilt, and fear, believing this dream to be reality. So when we say post-separation, so post-separation means since the time of Adam and Eve and paradise, there's some point at which that all changed, and we saw ourselves as separate from the whole, separate from paradise. That symbolically are being, quote, cast out of heaven. Adam and Eve, that is. Actually, that's not true. I mean, it's not true in the sense God does not cast us out of heaven. That's a misinterpretation. What happens is we chose to leave. We chose to think things out on our own, to separate in that sense. And now we're trying to get back, right? So heaven appears as distant and unreal. The world seems to be solid and true because it's got this physicality about it. It seems solid. It's not in the sense that it's not eternal, for one thing. Fear appears to be justified. Separation appears as possible. Every culture, every society dreams its own dreams. So that's what I mean by the 2 dreams. There's your dream, and then there's a society dream, which we dream as a group, as a people, as a culture. Every individual has their own dreams. You are the dreamer, the judge of the world you see. The world is a mirror reflecting the contents of the mind. Awakening begins when you recognize that what we perceive is not the cause of the experience, but its effect. So we're seeing the effect of what's going on. That's why the Course in Miracles says, seek not to change the world, choose to change your mind about the world. So this is the last words of Caesar Augustus were, did I play my part well in this tragedy? So he knew that it was a tragedy. And if you know his life story, it was a tragedy. It was just the drama that went on. We got a lot of drama going on in politics right now, too. But there was a lot of drama that went on during this particular time in history. You know, they wind up killing each other. and all kinds of insanity was going on in their parliament. So this is Ludwig Wittgenstein. Very interesting that he is many people regard him as the most outstanding intellectual of the 20th century. Uh, he's a philosopher of mathematics. This is a direct quote from him. "We are asleep. Our life is a dream. We wake up sometimes, just enough that we are dreaming." Now, I came across this interesting picture. This is Wittgenstein, and as a matter of fact, he grew up in Austria, along with, here he is in a class of young boys. Here's Adolf Hitler over here. Looks like he's got his arms folded down here. And here's Wittgenstein. So I did a little research on this to see how it was that the two of them were in the same class at the same time. And what my research told me that actually, after this picture was taken, Hitler was demoted a grade. They held him back at the end of this time. And Wittgenstein was promoted to skip a grade, going up. So one went down, one went. So they were no longer in class together. Again, that's the only time it happened when this photograph was taken. So dreams are the best examples you could have of how perception can be utilized to substitute illusion for the truth. Because dreams are very illusionary. Things can morph from one form into another form, and you're on a road, but you're in the water, but you're on a boat, but you're not on a boat. So things just keep moving around and moving around in a very morphing-like way. Now, we like stories, and because we like stories, dreams are stories, so we can tell the story, right? You do not take them seriously on awakening because the fact that reality is so outrageously violated in them becomes apparent. So we can have dream. We can fly in a dream. Now you can't fly under normal conditions in this world. Your body just can't lift up and go into the clouds. But all sorts of strange things can happen within the context of a dream. And we're going to be looking at some fairy tale dreams in a minute to see how, like Alice in Wonderland, very strange world. Yet they are a way of looking at the world and changing it to suit the ego better, because the ego is the perspective, is the one that's interpreting the dream. They provide striking examples both of the ego's inability to tolerate reality and of your willingness to change reality on its behalf. That is a quote from the Course. So one of the first ones we'll look here at Spinoza. I really like Spinoza. Spinoza was also a real intellectual. He's sort of a prequel to demythologizing. When I was in seminary back in the 1960s, we discovered Rudolf Bultmann, who really popularized the idea of demythologizing. But it made so much sense because one of the problems we have in studying mythology is literalism. I mean, taking the myth literal somehow or another. And you get into literalism, then it gets difficult because it's much better to understand that what's happening here is symbolic. It's telling us something important and real, but don't get too hooked up on, oh, here's a good example, one of the primary examples. And the Course in Miracles does this. We talk about God as Father. Okay, the Father image is a good image, a mother image is a good image, but God is certainly not limited to a body. The Father has a body, the Mother has a body, but the body itself is an illusion. The Course is very clear. It says this many times, I am not a body, I am free. That's one of the most repeated lines in the whole Course. What you are spirit, and spirit which cannot be limited to the form of a body. Bodies have limitation in space and time and in form, but you can't be limited like that. Anything that you take it too literal, and then you've got a problem. One of the biggest problems we got is our literal interpretation of heaven, because people tend to think of pearly gates and streets of gold and stuff like that. So you're making that up. That's not heaven at all. It's, first of all, the Course is very clear. It is, heaven is not a place or condition. It is merely a perfect oneness, the awareness of perfect oneness. Now, again, we keep going back to something physical. It's difficult for the mind to transcend the physical dimension and move purely into the spiritual dimension where concepts and ideas go beyond form. So Spinoza understood God not as a supernatural ruler intervening in history, but as the infinite intelligence and lawful order underlying all existence. So there are basic laws of nature, for example. We got physical laws, but we also have metaphysical laws. Metaphysical laws transcend physical laws. Physical laws tell us how steam works in an engine, whatever, how billiard ball affects another billiard ball, etc. But what we're talking about now begins to transcend that. We're not talking about a physical thing. We're talking one of the good examples, the primary example, as you give, so do you receive. All right. Cause and effect. It's a basic metaphysical law. As you give, so do you receive. As we give our love away, love is going to come back away. If we give our attack away, attack is going to come back our way. That's metaphysical. That's not physical in this sense. So connecting to the Course is God is love, not punishment. God does not punish. Separation is not real. Like the prodigal son, we are always welcome home. As a matter of fact, is you never left home. This whole world is the dream, the image. So, dream interpretation and demythologizing in A Course in Miracles. Course in Miracles treats ordinary waking life as dream life. Dream interpretation is not only about nighttime dreams, it's also about understanding the symbolic nature of all perception. Remember, projection makes perception. So what we do with demythology is we loosen our attachment to literal interpretations of the world and help reveal the deeper psychological and spiritual meaning being projected into the experience. So the world is a symbol. The world you see is an illusion of a world. The world we see as the physical world is in front of it. It's just a form of the world. Collecting myths, cultural narratives, ordinary social realities can therefore be understood as symbols and constructs rather than ultimately true. The Course in Miracles one place is nothing so blinding as the perception of form. And we get caught up in the form. We get caught in the way things look. Things have got to look a particular way. And so we keep creating different forms, which we then find as attractive. We want those forms to be part of our life. All right. So, ordinary waking experiences dreamlike. Dream interpretation applies to all perception, not only nighttime dreams. The world reflects hidden beliefs, fears, and judgments. Demythologizing losing attachments to literal interpretation. Dream interpretation reveals a deeper psychological and spiritual meaning. The goal is not merely to understand the dream, but to awaken from it. And let's talk a little about Joe Campbell. Back in 1970, April 1973, I took a class on an all-day seminar with Joe Campbell at the C.G. Young Center on 39th Street in New York City, and really fell in love with the whole hero mythology process, the way that Campbell was describing it. So he discovered that myths, legends, and sacred stories from around the world share a common structure. So that's interesting. It didn't matter where the culture, where the story comes from. There's a common structure. One of the most common structures of all is the story of a hero of 1,000 faces. That is, some hero. You're the hero. You're the heroine of your dream, right? And one of the one of the books that I read earlier on was called Pilgrim's Progress. Now, if you don't know what you know about Pilgrim's Progress, it was written by John Bunyan in 1678, which makes it one of the earliest and most influential spiritual narratives in English literature. The story follows a guy whose name is Christian, and Christian is going on a pilgrimage from a place called the City of Destruction to another place called the Celestial City. And he encounters obstacles, temptations, fears, spiritual lessons along the way. So here's the cover of the book. And this is Pilgrim, and he's headed off to the celestial city over here, which is heaven, right? and he's carrying these burdens on his back, and he goes through these tests, the sloth of despondency, the valley of humiliation, all this stuff he's got to go through is a part of his learning, spiritual learning process. And as he does this, he loses some of his burdens. When he eventually arrives to the kingdom of heaven, he is naked. He has nothing to take in with him, symbolically naked, of course. Everything has been taken, all the burdens are gone, in other words. So Joe Campbell says, myths are public dreams. Dreams are private myths. It's a great way to understand it. Very simple. So dream interpretation is a personal dream, myth interpretation, collective dream, and demythologizing awakening us from the dream, which is what the Course in Miracles is trying to help us do. So the theme of sleeping, dreaming, forgetting, and awakening again appears in great literature and mythology. We're going to do 4 fairy tales. One from the 18th century, one from the 19th century, one from the 20th century, one from the 21st century. All right. And the oldest one we'll start with is this one, which is Sleeping Beauty. So to remind you what it's about, a princess falls into a deep sleep. An entire kingdom falls asleep with her. Time passes. A forest grows around the castle. Everything remains frozen in time, right? And then according to the dream of separation, the Son of God has fallen asleep and is dreaming. The sleeping princess symbolizes the Christ mind. The sleeping kingdom symbolizes humanity. The surrounding forest represents fear, guilt, judgment, and defenses that seem to be separate us from reality. So the awakening. So the prince represents divine love, not romantic love itself, but divine love, complete love, whole love. The awakening kiss symbolizes grace. Salvation is not self-achieved, it is acceptance. So the miracle awakens us. The Holy Spirit gently calls us from sleep. Like, wake up, come on, wake up, very gently, trying to help us to wake up. So the message of the Course is we do not fight our way back to God. We awaken to discover that God never left. God never left us, and the good news is we never left God, except to fall into a dream and to think that the dream is real. So the kingdom sleeps. We live in a dream of separation, believing ourselves to be alone, limited, and afraid. The forest of forgetting, layers of fear, guilt, judgment, defenses obscure the light of reality and hide the way home. The Prince's love, divine love, has never stopped calling us. It's waiting for us outside the gate of our dreams. The kiss of grace through acceptance and forgiveness, we awaken to our true and changeless self, which has always been there, never changed. The kingdom is restored. Nothing real was ever damaged. Heaven remains unchanged. Only love is real. So it's just amazing how this was summary of the Sleeping Beauty, excuse me, is a perfect summary of the Course in Miracles. Right there. The kingdom awakens because nothing real was ever lost. That's why we talk about when we die, or why some of these dreams, we're in Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz in a moment, we're going home. We're going home. The people are like, I want to go home. I want to go home. And home is the thing that pulls us. But that's where the father is. That's where the mother is as well, right? Reality has not been altered by the dream. Only our awareness has been obscured. So this is a process we're all going through. All hero journeys. You're the hero of your own journey. So Alice in Wonderland is really this kind of absurdity of the ego. Perhaps no better capture the insanity of the ego than Alice in Adventures in Wonderland. As you know, this is just full of dream imageries and pieces of insanity and things that don't make sense at all. But that's part of what happens in dreams. So Alice falls down a rabbit hole into a world where nothing makes sense. Logic is twisted. Time behaves strangely. Identity is uncertain. The inhabitants are irrational and often contradictory. The Mad Hatter asks impossible questions. The Cheshire Cat appears and then disappears. The Queen of Hearts screams off with their heads. Everything is kind of upside down and backwards, right? So it resembles A Course in Miracles saying, this is an insane world, and do not underestimate the extent of its insanity. And you can see that plenty. Just turn on your television, turn on your computer, look at the news, right? So the ego's thought system is inherently contradictory. The ego's thought system, it promises happiness while producing suffering. That the happiness is out there somewhere. If you just have enough money or a nice enough car or house or whatever it is, you're going to be okay. Well, no, that doesn't really change anything. If it doesn't change your mind, it seeks safety through attack, like you're attacking other people as a defense. Seeks love through specialness. You're special, so you get to be loved because you're special. It insists that separation brings freedom while simultaneously producing fear. It's a really weird world. So there's one of the events that happens in Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll's The Looking Glass. Tweedledee tells Alice that the Red King is dreaming her, and were he to awaken, Alice would be nowhere because she's only a character in his dream. And Tweedledee says that Alice will go out like a light, like a candle, when the king awakens. And Alice complains that their loud talking will awake the king. And Tweedledee says, well, it's no use you're talking about waking him when you know that you're very well that you're not real. And then Alice begins to scream and cry, I am real, I am real. Right? That's the confusion. This way, that way, nowhere, somewhere. We get so caught up in one of the most important things to understand in the Course is coming down to the point of realizing whatever the dream is, whatever the story is, whatever the drama is, nothing happened. Nothing really happened in form that has to take the peace of God away from me unless I allow the peace of God to be taken away from me by the dream, by the illusion. This is not heaven. If I'm dreaming that I'm in some very difficult, distant land, then I am looking for home. I am lost, and I think that the world I'm in is real. And what the Course is saying, no, it's not real. Heaven's real. Eternity's real. Love is real. This is what we're going for. But in the meantime, the world is very, very confused. So then let's look at the Wizard of Oz. So Dorothy represents the soul's longing to return home. Like Alice, she enters an altered reality filled with strange characters and magical events. But unlike Alice, Dorothy has one overweening desire. I want to go home. Right? And home here is this is interesting. So Pilgrim's Progress, we've got this castle up here representing heaven or something. And here's Dorothy on the yellow brick road. Also, it's very similar to Pilgrim's Progress, right? Also got it familiar with, as Pilgrim does as well. Because beneath every search in the world lies a deeper yearning, the desire to return to our source. You know that Jim Carrey has come with a statement about how I wish that everybody could do what I did, which is to get all the fame and all the money and everything that you want, and then realize that's not it. Even when the meantime, the dream is that's what will make you happy, but he's saying that doesn't change anything. It just depends upon where your mind is at. So the Course in Miracles teaches our deepest longing is for something in the world, but to awaken from the dream and to remember our home in God. That's the important. And the good news is the real dream, you never left home. You never left home. Now, let's go to a little bit deeper into the Wizard of Oz. So the Great Wizard turns out to be an illusion. Man, there's nobody there, right? Pay no attention to the man behind that curtain. So the ego seeker, the mighty wizard appears all-powerful, yet behind the curtain stands a frightened little man projecting images. That's why the ego is this frightened little man, right? The ego operates in exactly the same way, pretending to be a great wizard, so to speak. So the ego seems immense and powerful until we look directly at it, and then we discover there was never anything there. That's why in the very first opening section of the course, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God, and nothing happened. Heaven has never been lost. The way home is not achieved through struggle. It is remembered. Now, this is a very important point, and just understanding the whole course. There's nothing you have to do except wake up, except remember who you really are. That's it. That's it. And if you remember who you really are, you realize you're already home. So the journey ends where it began. Home was always present. It never was someplace else other than inside you, inside your mind, inside the spirit that makes you up right now. It's immediately available to you. You don't have to wait till the body dies to go home. You already have what you seek. You are already where you long to be. If you can see it, but the thing is that you got to be able to see it. This is fine. If the mind is home, you're home. So, as you know, Dorothy has companions, but that's a very common theme in hero mythology. There's going to be a companion, the people that are walking the path with you. And in her case, we've got the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion, as you know, and he's looking for a brain, right, which he symbolically receives. The Tin Man is looking for his heart, yet he is loving. And the Cowardly Lion is looking for courage, even though he is brave. So all of these things were really, excuse me, they're already there inside. He's already got the heart. He's already got the wisdom. He's already brave, but you've got to see that that's true. So this is, of course, central teaching. We do not have to acquire salvation. We already have it. You're already saved. We do not have to become worthy of God. We are already worthy. You never left him. You are already home. Huh? Huh. And then let's do the Polar Express. So this is the latest edition. This is the 21st century one. And this was, I think, from back 2015 or something like that. It's about 10 years old. And so it's a young boy. It's a dream. They're all dreams. Every one of these is a dream. Alice is dreaming. Dorothy's dreaming. This is a dream again. So a young boy, he's doubting the reality of Santa Claus. He's doubting reality of but it's not Santa Claus. It's really Christmas, and what Christmas symbolizes is the love that's behind Christmas. But he begins to doubt whether this is true. He's losing faith in mystery and wonder and magic. Then a train arrives. He boards the Polar Express and journeys to the North Pole. And the story unfolds like a dream. The train appears in the middle of the night. The passengers travel through impossible landscapes, just as in The Wizard of Oz, or just as in Dorothy, or Alice in Wonderland. Reality seems suspended. A very weird world. The boy's journey is ultimately about trust. Can he believe what he can be proven? Can he hear what others cannot hear? Can he remain open to wonder and mystery? You know, one of the things in the book I wrote on mysticism so many years ago, there's a section on children and mysticism. Because if you can remember it, try a little bit. The child has this more mystical mind. The Santa Claus is real, right? Angels are real. Fairies are real. They really exist. They're really out there somewhere, and that's, of course, it's inside. But you have this connection. You can see the connection, right? So, from A Course in Miracles perspective, the train symbolizes the spiritual path itself. At some point in life, each of us receive an invitation. We hear a call. Something within us whispers that there must be more than the world we see. And I appreciate if some of you, when we get to a break, you could maybe tell about this, because there are times, I can remember a few times. I'll just tell you a couple real quick. One was just, I think it was 9 or 10, and I was standing on a cistern behind our house, and it was spring, and I just remember looking and having this kind of sense of wonder because it was a beautiful spring day, as I recall, and just kind of being literally overwhelmed by the whole thing, by what I was seeing. My mother hanging clothes on the line, and it just all fit together in some sort of perfect way. That happens when it's easier as a child when you have this, and of course, then there's this call to go deeper into this, understand more of this mystery, to understand more of this nature, and to understand more of the love that's behind it. Right? So the boy's journey is ultimately about trust. Can he believe what cannot be proved? Can he hear what others cannot hear? Can he remain open to wonder? That what the bell symbolizes here. The bell represents the voice for God. The call of the Spirit never disappears. Only our willingness to listen. So you get hardened by the world. You shut down. There's no such thing as Santa Claus. Of course, there's no such thing as Santa Claus. But there's something behind Santa. It's what that symbolizes. It's the love behind it that matters. So the polar expresses that the bell symbolizes spiritual awareness. A Course in Miracles often distinguishes between physical perception and spiritual vision. What we're looking for is really is the vision. We'll talk about more about vision at another point. Vision is sight that goes beyond eyesight. It's another kind of seeing. You have visionary experiences, which are not necessarily something you can concretize or put into form, but sometimes it has that quality too. The Holy Spirit speaks quietly, only the willing hear. This is such an important concept that the Holy Spirit is always there, always speaking to you. There's never a time that the Holy Spirit isn't there, like whispering in your ear, if you're willing to hear. You've got to be willing to hear. And sometimes I notice the book I wrote on mysticism, I have a section about how radical experiences, difficult experiences, can sometimes wake us up because the mind stops. You got an overload. You got an overload of information. The mind stops, and then you see, then you hear. Something will come to you. That for those who have heard the call, something remains forever unchanged. You cannot forget these kind of experiences. They will stay with you forever because they're more real than the world that we call the real world. So the polar express reminds us that awakening involves recovering a childlike openness. What we shut down as we get older, we literally shut down. And there's actually kind of an age as you begin to do it. As you get up to around about 7, 8, 9, there's more shutdown, more shutdown, more shut. Because the fantasy world, which was so real and so easily acceptable, is the other kids. Oh, there's no such thing as Santa Claus. Well, of course, literally, there's no such thing as Santa Claus. It's the symbolism that matters. So Jesus frequently emphasizes innocence rather than sophistication. The awakened mind does not become cynical, it becomes simple. Simple is really good. Simple is easy. Simple means that you can hear. So the bell of truth continues to ring. The question is whether or not we're listening. And what you don't want to stop being able to hear. So the Course in Miracles is a little summary here. Spiritual vision literally cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. The atonement is the undoing of the ego. All solutions the physical eyes see dissolve, right? Because it's not about the physical eyes. Spiritual vision looks within and recognizes immediately that the altar has been defiled and needs to be repaired and protected. These are all really direct summaries from the Course in Miracles. Perfect awareness of the right defense, it passes over all others, looking past error to truth. It's willing to overlook error, to go past the error, to look at the truth behind. Don't get stuck in the error. Don't get caught in somebody else's lie. You see it, and you see it. Okay, well, but don't let that hold you back. transcend that. Go for the truth of the love that's there. Because of the strength of the vision, it brings the mind into its service. This is really important, having the mind in the service. This reestablishes the power of the mind, makes it increasingly unable to tolerate delay, realizing it only adds unnecessary pain. So I could be making decisions that are going to get me out of the insanity and out of the pain if I'm willing to do that. As a result, the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it once had regarded as very minor intrusions or discomforts. So this is helping to wake up. Spiritualism does not deny the world, it heals the mind that perceives it, it looks with love, and choosing only the truth. So spiritual vision restores the altar within the mind, reestablishes a peace through the atonement. Let's put all of these together now. So the oldest myth that we have historically, this is late 1690s. This was first printed, right? This awakening process. And then the next would be Alice in Wonderland from the 19th century, Awakening from Absurdity, the way we get out of all this. Then The Wizard of Oz from the 20th century, Discovery that Home is always available, and then The Polar Express from the 21st century. Right? So here's the process. A departure from ordinary awareness, we're leaving, enter into a dream-like world, confusion, challenges, lessons. That's true for all Pilgrim's Progress, Dorothy, all of them. They go through all these difficulties. Discover a hidden truth. It's inside you. You never left home. That's a hidden truth right there. You're already awake. That's a hidden truth. You don't believe that. An awakening to return home. And so each story is the same story. A journey from sleep to awakening, from fear to love, from separation to wholeness. And many stories, one message: wake up, remember who you are. Every great fairy tale is really the story of awakening.